Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Killing Me Smalls podcast. I'm your host, Mike Small. You can follow me on Twitter at Real Mike Small. Make sure you subscribe to the Painted Lines and you get high quality podcasts like this. At least I hope you think so, as well as so many other things. On the show today, this guy right here is a guy that I've known for almost 30 years. His name is Mike McCartney. You may know him as the former assistant GM of the Philadelphia Eagles. You might also know him as the guy that got Kirk Cousins the most legendary NFL contract of all time in terms of guaranteed money. And we are going to talk about being an agent and the difference between being an agent and an NFL executive the week before the draft, as well as this upcoming draft, which I find to be one of the more fascinating ones of all time. But before we get going, Michael, how are you doing?
I'm great. Yeah. Is it May 2nd yet?
It is not. You got one more week to go. One more week. Are you looking forward to this?
For May 2nd.
So that's a great start. Do you look forward to that being over? Are you?
I do.
Why is that?
I enjoy the draft from the perspective of watching what the teams do and how they value players and all that. But feel just a lot of pressure as an agent to have all of my guys drafted or placed in the right spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so having been an agent for 20 years, it doesn't always go great. And so the day after the draft is a great day in the McCartney household.
Well, it's a great day unless it's one of your guys that doesn't get drafted and you've got to find him a home. Then it gets a little stressful, if I recall
Usually,
from our previous conversations.
Yeah, 95%, if not more, percent of the time, we'll have a guy sign within minutes after the draft if he's undrafted. And last year was one year where I woke up Sunday morning and I didn't have a job for one of my guys, and that was tough. It was actually really tough on Saturday night. Sunday, I had turned my phone off during church in our living room and got a text from a team, and during church texting, I got him a job. So that was good by Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, that prayer was answered for you.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about the clients that you have coming into this year. I don't know if you've had top picks before. You've had Haloti Ngata, you've had AJ Hawk, so many other players that, were first day draft picks. This year, who are you excited about?
We've got a couple guys that should go on Friday. Aleem McNeil is a defensive tackle out of NC State.
He's a monster.
He is. And what's cool about Aleem, he probably played about 340 this year as a nose tackle. We got his weight down just because we felt like we wanted to showcase his movement. Yeah. But I love to tell people he was a 270-pound outfielder in high school baseball. Can you imagine? I think he was playing left, but can you imagine a 270-pound outfielder? That's crazy. He's a really good athlete, really explosive athlete, and a great kid.
So take me back to your days. So obviously a lot of the people that listen to this podcast and watch it are Philadelphia fans. So this draft is being compared a lot to the one where you drafted Donovan McNabb second overall. And it was quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3. It was Couch, McNabb, then Akili Smith. And then a little later, I think it was Dante Culpepper. There were 4 or 5. I think there were 5 in the first round. Am I right?
Cade McNown went to the Bears that year.
Cade McNown. So
yeah.
How do you see a lot of similarities between this year's draft and that one? And I want you to take me back through what that was like and how it might compare to what some of the GMs are going through now.
Well, it's hard for me. The scout in me knows that there's a difference between, watching players on TV and studying players. And I haven't really studied most of these quarterbacks like I would have if I was on the team side. What I remember about that draft is most of us that had a say in the decision fell for Donovan right away. And we just felt like he had just great playmaking ability. He had natural leadership. He's big, strong, fast, all that. And we would have been split on the other guys. We weren't enamored with Tim Couch. Akili Smith had some tools, but he had been a one-year starter and had some maybe concerns off the field. Culpepper felt like he was maybe a little bit of a product of the system in Central Florida. I don't think we really were excited about Cade. So really, it was all Donovan from the very beginning for us. I can remember at the Senior Bowl, I was on the field standing with Andy Reid, and we were in the end zone, and Donovan threw what we call a cover two ball, where it was the defense was in two deep, two safeties deep, and the corners are on the line of scrimmage, and it's an outside fade that you got to throw over the corner, but you got to throw it on a line before the safety gets there. It's a cover two throw, hole throw. And McNabb, I mean, it was a rip. I mean, a shot. He threw it with so much velocity, perfect upfield shoulder throw. And Andy Reid, and I can remember we looked at each other like, holy crap, was that a big time throw? And then, he's playing basketball for Syracuse. He's a big time athlete. So not everybody necessarily in the process loved him, but most of the people that were in the decision-making role did. So, and we knew Cleveland was taking Couch. So we went into the draft, that whole process the last week or two, kind of feeling really good that we're going to get our quarterback of the future. So,
do you remember having a backup plan if for some crazy reason Cleveland decided to take McNabb? I think half of Philadelphia thought it would have been Ricky Williams, but it probably wasn't, was it?
No, Ricky wasn't even our top running back. Edgerrin James was our top guy. And then we liked Torrey Holt a lot too. And he ended up going 6th to the Rams. Ricky was down the line for us. And I mean, you can't help but think of that. We can call it the Donovan McNabb quarterback draft, but that was really the Ricky Williams draft, the way Mayor Rendell and the city just sort of fell for Ricky. And, some people thought or said that they might blow up the vet, which we thought might not be a bad idea. We just didn't want to be there if they did it.
Hey, what's up, guys? MLB baseball is in full swing. The NBA and NHL playoffs are right around the corner, and the NFL season is mere moments away. While we here at the Painted Lines are devoted to bringing you top-notch content from all the major sports, we are excited to also now give you the opportunity to cash in on all that content and knowledge. If you follow the link below, you will have the opportunity to sign up with BetRivers, an online sportsbook, and get an instant new user deposit match of up to $250. That's free money that you can use and try to turn into more free money. Let's go. Don't sit there and waste all that money. Turn every basket into an otherwise meaningless Cavs-Timberwolves matchup in on a random Wednesday in March. That makes it all the more exciting. For betting tips and advice, be sure to check out written content from our top prognosticator, Money Max, on our website at thepaintedlines.com, or check out the Tough Cover podcast right here on the Painted Lines YouTube channel. You've seen the commercials all over TV and radio, but now is the time. Sign up today with BetRivers using the link below and start cashing in on your love for sports. Using the link below will automatically inform BetRivers that TPL sent you, and you'll get that new user deposit match of up to $250. Don't miss out on this opportunity for some free money, baby.
Yeah, that was an interesting time when they sent a bunch of guys up to boo the pick, and you got the best quarterback in franchise history. What are some of the things that you think some of the general managers are going through right now? So I'm thinking about San Francisco. John Lynch trades from 12 up to 3. And do you think he makes that trade fully knowing who he's going to pick? Or do you think he makes that trade thinking, I'd like one of 2 or 3 guys?
Well, I think that's Kyle Shanahan making that move, to be honest. Kyle is the one that's going to decide who they want. It's a great debate, honestly, because a lot of the media has speculated that he traded up for Mac Jones. And so the conversations I'm having with teams, with decision makers, with coaches is, it's easy for everybody to say, well, Kyle wants the next Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins. He wants someone that's extremely smart, can process really quickly and run his offense. What kind of upside does Mac have? On the other hand, this is Kyle's chance to get an explosive athlete to run his offense, to run the boot game, and to really, not just make plays in the passing game, but make plays in his feet. So I think all of the league is really, eager to see what Kyle's going to do at that second pick or third pick. We're all making an assumption that Clemson, quarterback and BYU's quarterbacks are gone 1 and 2. Right. We'll see, but I think which one Kyle chooses is going to be fascinating to me as well as a lot of guys and a lot of people following the draft. But and then Atlanta.
Well, I think that's when the draft begins, right?
Atlanta's picking fourth, and here's the thing. You're going to win games with Arthur Smith's offense, leadership, Matt Ryan at the helm. This could be your last chance to get a quarterback that's a top 4 pick. You may not have this opportunity for years to come. So what do? Do you help the team win today when you have a new regime, new GM, new head coach, and you do have some time to build a winner? Or do you just go ahead and get your quarterback, and a couple of the guys probably need to be redshirted anyway, Fields and Trey Lance. So, you could really set up your future, really well if you're Atlanta by just sticking at 4 and taking, who's there. It's going to be fascinating as well. And then similarly, Detroit, I think probably doesn't take a quarterback because their general manager came from the Rams, and he's trading for a guy he helped draft a few years ago. So I think he's probably committed to Jared Goff. Carolina's probably committed to Sam Darnold. Denver, who knows? The other team, is Chicago. What is Chicago doing at 20? An awful long way to come, into the top 6.
If I'm trying to save my bacon as a general manager and a coach, I'm not trusting it to Andy Dalton. They've got to have some sort of hope.
Yeah, and so like I was about to say, do they care about the 2022 draft right now, or is it all about 2021 where they have to win? Both the GM and head coach seemingly have to win. So it's going to be a fascinating quarterback, draft, and to have 5 that are going to potentially go in the top, 7, 8, 9 picks is makes it more intriguing.
Can you remember a guy getting as much hype as Kyle Pitts is getting right now? A guy that, he was a good player during the year, and, I follow the SEC very closely, and I knew that he was a really good player. But all of a sudden, since the draft stuff has begun, he's the next Megatron, the next Weapon X, whatever. He's real, the hype seems to be incredible.
Well, he's a complete mismatch with his size, his movement, and speed. But, what's interesting about what we're reading about, especially in April, everybody loves to say there's risers and fallers. There really aren't. It's just the media is kind of catching up to what the league thought of during the fall. So in talking to team scouts, they were drooling over Kyle Pitts in September, October, November. We weren't reading about it back then. So he's a unicorn. He's a once in a lifetime type athlete. So it doesn't surprise me. He's people talk about him like they talked about Quentin Nelson out of Notre Dame a couple of years ago. Like, just can't miss, day one starter, day one, in this case, mismatch. And he's fun to watch.
It's really interesting to me to watch the Cincinnati Bengals because they never do much, right? They usually just stay put and make pretty conservative picks. And I think conventional wisdom says they're going to take Penei Sewell on the offensive line, but now a lot more is coming out. Are they going to go with Jamar Chase because Joe Burrow's begging them to do so? Do they take the offensive lineman? What any gut feel on that one?
I agree that it's going to that they can just sit tight in the draft the way it's fallen, with the quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3, and maybe in the top 4. Has Cincinnati sitting in a great spot, and they are not a team to move. Who knows? Like, I don't believe Joe Burrow's all over them to take Jamar Chase. I think Joe Burrow is going to trust the Bengals decision makers. It's a matter of what does the second round look like? If let's just assume those are the 2 needs, right? And they seem like they're big needs: offensive tackle and receiver. what you have to try to do is speculate, what are you going to get in the second round? Are you going to get a better receiver in the second round or a better offensive lineman? If you feel good that you're going to get a legit starting offensive tackle that can come in day one in the second round, then you take the receiver and vice versa. So I think, understanding the depth of the draft matters, and that's what the good teams can do.
What do you feel about the mock drafts? I've known you for a long time, and I know you're genuinely somewhat of a cynical guy when it comes to some of these things. And I've got to think when, Mel Kiper comes up out with version 2.0 and Daniel Jeremiah, and everybody's got a mock draft and they're all different. Do you give any of them more credibility than others, or do you think it's just a bunch of speculation and guessing and nobody ever has a clue?
The only mock drafts I'm looking at right now are the NBA mock drafts. Just see who my Detroit Pistons are taking. I don't think they have any value in because you don't know what a team is thinking. You don't know what a team's board has. And I'll give you a conversation I've shared with my players going into this draft. We're going to have roughly 260 draft picks, and yet a team only needs roughly 110 to 120 names on their board to make sure they can pick all 7 rounds. What that tells you is everybody's draft board is drastically different, right? If everybody was similar, then you're going to need about 250 names, right? But they're vastly different.
Right.
And so they literally need 110, 120, maybe it's 130 or 40 for some teams, but I've heard through the years that many teams are in the low 100s. And so it just shows you that, everybody is so different. They see it differently. And as a result, how can you mock draft? How can you predict what a team's going to do? And every year, no one's even close, right? So it is fun. It's fun to talk about from a fan perspective. It's fun. I mean, we're doing it. We're debating, what's Atlanta going to do? What's Cincinnati going to do? And I do think from a team perspective, they probably look at a few. You probably named, Daniel Jeremiah, Dane Brugler are a couple good ones. And it's so funny whenever I ask guys that are doing the mock drafts, and I'll kid them about a pick here or there. The first thing they always say is, "I hate doing this, but my editor makes me do it." They all hate doing it, which is so funny because they know they're going to be wrong. And then, so those are the guys that are kind of insiders in the league. Then you get the fans that are doing it, and they're just looking at 5 mock drafts and just trying to look different. They don't even have, there's no rhyme or reason.
The mock drafts with trades are the fun ones, right? Like I did one the other day, and I think I got like 6 picks for 2022. Right?
Yeah, the draft simulators that are new. It's funny. I did a draft simulation last year and sent it to a team, and I said, I did the draft for you. And he's like, if we get this draft, we're going to be sitting pretty, So those are kind of fun,
right?
But they're kind of meaningless too when it comes down to it. It's fun. Is there any sporting event that has as much hype and leadway as the NFL draft? There's nothing close to it.
No.
I mean, we don't stop.
The NBA draft's fun, but it's not even close.
Not even close. We'll talk about the NBA draft a couple days prior. We're talking about the NFL draft for months, and then all of April is crazy. Everybody I talk to and on the team side says, I can't wait for May 2nd. So it's just because of the hype. It's just, I don't want to say out of control, but it's so immense.
So speaking of the team side, have you ever made a draft evaluation based on playing rock, paper, scissors?
No, and I'm sure that was taken out of context a little bit. I mean, it's silly, right?
We have to have fun with it, Mike. You got to go with
it. There's a lot of things that I see in this league that are I kind of make me roll my eyes. We are definitely. Well, I don't know if this has changed from the McNabb draft, but the paralysis of overanalysis is relevant, right? I mean, there are people that are just, they go back to the tape over and over to see if they can, find something new about a player. And usually, your first view of a player is going to be your best view, when it's fresh and you're whatever you see, you have to trust your eyes. But there's so much over conversation, over analysis, and you can talk yourself out of liking a player. And I always find that the teams that focus on what a guy can do, as opposed to what a guy can't do are going to make better decisions in the long run.
So getting back to the Philadelphia Eagles, you, in full disclosure, you have a very good relationship with Howie Roseman. He used to work with you. Wasn't he like your intern or something?
Well, he wasn't my intern. He was Joe Banner's intern, and he used to sit on a chair all day and do draft studies, or contract studies, I should say. And I got to know Howie my last year. So I am a fan of Howie. I've known him for a long time.
So Howie, in full disclosure, again, has taken a lot of heat around here in the last year, with the handling of the Carson Wentz situation, with drafting Jalen Hurts. People are questioning trading down from 6 to 12 because they do need weapons. But they do need a lot more than that. I actually think it was a really good trade for the Eagles. When you take an outside look at the Eagles, in terms of, they seem to have a lot of needs. You've got Jalen Hurts. Are they committing to him? Nobody's committed anything. What are your thoughts about where the Eagles stand, how they should look on May 2nd, and what people should think about going forward with this team?
Well, a couple things. I think, it seems like it's forgotten, but there's a Super Bowl trophy in that building, and it wasn't that long ago. And, if you had said to the Eagles fans,
both quarterbacks and the coach that won it are gone.
If you had said to Eagles fans prior to that season, you get either to be 9-7, 10-6 the next decade, or you get to win a Super Bowl, and then it kind of falls apart 4 years later, I don't think there's a single fan in that city that would have turned down having won a Super Bowl. So that does happen. Fans forget that, and it's hard. There's 32 teams competing. It's hard to win.
Yeah.
But sitting here on May 2nd, look, I think that when you have a new head coach, there's a grace period. It takes time to build a winner. And so the trade for Howie and the Eagles to build up on the 2022 draft was smart on a couple of levels, because A, they do have time with a new head coach, but B, when I'm talking to teams this week, a lot of people are saying that the depth of the draft isn't the same because of COVID, and there were at least 200 players that stayed in college football that normally would have turned pro this year. And that's probably going to impact the bottom of the draft more. But the reality is many of these guys are going to go play better in 2021 for the 22 draft. And the 2022 draft might be the deepest that we're going to see in our lifetime as a result. So give, Howie credit for getting potentially a couple extra ones in 2022. And we tend to think that there's to go from a team that doesn't make the playoffs to a Super Bowl winner, teams are one or two players away. That's not it. They're several players away, and it's going to take time. So I agree, when you have a new coach and you're going to give him time to install his system, his culture, that you need players. And the more players you can get, the better. You remember when Jimmy Johnson got to Dallas, and how many draft picks did he have those first few years?
Yeah.
So to me, I think the Eagles are in a good spot. You got to be honest about where you are, and of course they made the changes at quarterback and head coach, and so you're starting over in a sense, and get as many players as you can get.
I want to get back to that, but first I want to take a very, very quick break, as we do every week on the Killing Me Smalls podcast, where I promote a charity. And the one I promote is called Small Miracles. My daughter Jordan has a brain tumor and is doing amazing things. She finished her 16 months of chemotherapy. The tumor can't be operated on, but we have to get it checked every 6 months. And thank goodness the last check went really well, and we just live on 6 months to 6 months. But instead of sitting back and feeling sorry for herself, she has decided to start her own 501c3 charity, raising money for others. The name of the charity is Small Miracles. Right now, we're in the middle of helping out a family who lost the husband, actually the father, I should say. I don't think they were married. The one child has a brain tumor, and now they just found that the other child has a brain tumor, and we're trying to help them out. So if you want to donate any amount, please look at smallmiraclesinc.org. there's an opportunity to Venmo at Small Miracles. $1, $1,000,000, anything helps. And really proud of my daughter for what she does for others. And I know that, if any of you have kids and you know what this is like, and if you could help out somebody's child, it's definitely worth it. So, Mike, thanks for indulging me, and let's get back to it. So, getting back to the Eagles, did you get a chance to watch Jalen Hurts? I know you saw him in college some. I know you've seen him a little bit in the pros. You've probably heard some things. Do you think he's a franchise quarterback? And do you like what they're doing in terms of giving him that shot, but also holding some cards for next year in case it doesn't work out?
Yeah, I think it remains to be seen whether he's a franchise quarterback. I think he's a heck of an athlete. I think he's got an it factor from a leadership standpoint. It was interesting. I was talking to a former GM yesterday, and we were reminiscent about 20 years ago. Guys did not improve their accuracy. They might have gotten a little bit better here and there, but they didn't. You kind of were what you were accuracy wise. Well, in the last couple of years, we've seen one quarterback in particular, in Josh Allen, dramatically improve his accuracy. We've seen Lamar Jackson improve greatly his accuracy. And I think the common denominator is 20 years ago, we had a lot of pocket passers. And now we've got some big-time great athletes. And, if you're a great athlete, which Jalen Hurts is a great athlete, you have a chance to improve your accuracy. And I think that's the play, or the part of his game that we're going to need to see him, continue to grow in. And then let's see him in this offense. So I think Howie and the Eagles are doing a good job of, I know they didn't give him the starting job yesterday, but we kind of know where this is headed, right? It's not going to be
Joe Flacco, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's going to be Jalen Hurts' job to lose unless something, and even if something happened on draft day where they went back and got a quarterback, it's probably one they would have to redshirt. So Jalen's going to be, and let's see where he with his decision making, his processing, and his accuracy. And if he takes the next step and he becomes a franchise type quarterback, to have potential three number ones next year with a quarterback in place, a great place to be. If he isn't that guy, then you got a chance to go get one.
So I've got to talk to you about my favorite team, the Miami Dolphins, which I find to be fascinating going into this because they went from number 3 to number 12 back up to number 6. They've got 5 picks, I think, in the top 50, 2 in the first round, 1 at number 6, 1 at number 18. You've got Tua Tagovailoa coming off a so-so first year. Hard to judge. I mean, compare him to Justin Herbert, it's not as good, but he's completely healthy. What are your thoughts about Tua as a long-term quarterback from what you've seen, and what do you think they do at 6?
I do believe that you make your greatest improvement from year 1 to year 2, and especially in the NFL, where you really don't know what you're coming into when you step into an NFL building that first year. So I think we'll know a whole lot more about Tua at the end of this 2021 season. In talking to the Dolphins towards the end of the season, I knew that they were all in on Tua, for 2021. And so to make the trade, to move down and then come back up, we said it earlier, we alluded to it earlier, there's going to be 3 potential difference makers, at least from what most people believe. And one of them is going to be there at 6 for sure. And there might be more than 3, right? I mean, LSU receiver, you could probably throw the 2 Bama receivers in there as well, Oregon left tackle and the Florida tight end. So it gives the Dolphins, a lot of opportunity to get a difference maker at 6. You're going to come back and probably see them do something in the trenches at 18, and then just to have 5. In the first 2 rounds, you should get.
You're breaking my heart here. I want Najee Harris desperately at 18. There's no shot they go running back, is there?
I wouldn't go running back at 18. Yeah, I wouldn't.
When you talk about depth, there's 3 really good running backs, and they're all going to be gone by this middle of the second round.
We talk about running backs like that every year, and every year we find running backs all throughout the draft. I mean, I'm a guy who represents Philip Lindsay, and I'm tired of the nonsense that I hear about things like that. So you can find a good running back. I'm not saying you're going to find a great one necessarily, but this league is littered with running backs in day 3. and after. So to me, you got to find starters. You got to find guys that are, that move the needle as starters, and to have 5 picks in the first 2 rounds. If they can come out with 5 starters, that's going to be a big offseason for Miami.
It's an interesting philosophical discussion, right? Because you brought up a really good point when you talk about depth of position. That the receiver position's got a lot of depth this year. So do you say to yourself, okay, if Penei Sewell's there, you invested 3 picks last year in offensive linemen, high draft picks and offensive linemen. Do you add Sewell and have a dominant line and hope you get some decent receivers later? Or do you take what you know as a sure thing weapon and then figure it out? I think it's a tough decision.
Well, it's a good decision for them because they have 4 other picks. If they take Sewell and they say, hey, let's complete our O-line and have a dominant O-line, they got 4 more picks to get a really good receiver. I mean, Jefferson from the Vikings went, 20 last year, right? 21.
Don't remind me, Eagles fans, about that.
There's
right after Jalen Reagor, if you're paying attention.
Yes, I remember quite well. But there's going to be a lot of explosive receivers that are going to be in that latter part of the first round, throughout the second round, maybe more slot guys. But, there's a lot of different receiver options. Look, this is a good year for offensive linemen too. There's some depth in that position as well. So I can see, we said about Cincinnati, I can see Cincinnati or Miami feeling really good about whoever is there at those spots 5 and 6. And then, in the second round, or in Miami's case, later in the first round, supplementing, what they didn't get there.
Would you be shocked if Miami traded down again, or if there were a lot, or if several of those top 5? Well, look, the Jets and Jacksonville aren't making any trades. Doubt San Francisco will either. I guess I wouldn't be shocked if Atlanta makes a trade, but would you be shocked about anybody else?
So it depends on how far you're going, right? Like, you got to weigh in a difference maker versus a good player or a really good player. So, speculation has potentially New England, Chicago. Those are that's a long ways to go. At some point, and I said it earlier, I'm big on draft picks, having a lot of different opportunities. Miami's got a lot of opportunities with 5 picks in the first 2 rounds. To me, they're in a good position. Go get difference makers. Go get guys that you think are going to make a difference day one. And, if they only had 2 picks in the first 2 rounds, then I could see moving back. But with 5, I'm not sure there's.
I think it's 5 in the first 3. I might be wrong about that, but that's okay.
Whatever you said is what I'm going off of. But,
no, it's on me.
I just think go get players that make a difference. If you can get that. Now, look, if you're at 6 and you got 4 guys you're choosing from, and Denver wants to move from 9 to 6, and you feel like we're going to get one of the 4 we love, go down to 9, no problem. But to go down to 20, where you may not get a difference maker, and I don't know what their board looks like. Every board's different. Every team has different board.
Do people still use that Jimmy Johnson points thing? I mean, like, what would it take for Chicago or New England to get in the top 10?
I don't. There's a number of different ones now. That there's a funny story though on that Jimmy Johnson trade thing. So I'm in Chicago, and Dave Wanstead is our head coach, and I'm in the draft room, and he can tell that I'm pretty good with numbers. So he says, "Hey, we had this chart in in Dallas, where there was a point total. See if you can replicate it." And I'm like, I didn't go to MIT or anything, so I don't know. I had never seen it at that point. Well. So I can't replicate what I haven't seen, and he didn't do a great job of explaining it. So a few days later, he's got the chart. Somehow he convinces Jimmy Johnson to give him the chart, but he won't share it with anybody. So we're in the draft room, we're talking through things, and we break for lunch. And my office is right next to the draft room. And so I get to the draft room maybe 10 minutes early, from where we're going to reconvene, and I see the chart. And I'm starting to do the calculations in my mind. Okay, the printer is about 50 feet away.
Before you had a cell phone to snap a picture of it.
We didn't have a cell phone back then, but I ended up getting the chart, run to the printer, make a copy, throw it in my office, hide it, put it back in its original place. Nobody ever knew. So now I go to Philly a couple of years later, and
Are you
bring out
sure
the
you want to
chart.
finish the story, right? You can't get sued.
I know
We
this is
passed
20
our
years ago.
time.
So I bring the chart to Philly, and I know some people didn't love the chart, and I didn't think the chart was anything you should just use as like gospel way of doing things. I just thought it was a kind of a check and balance, right? Well, now the chart's kind of being talked about, so I remember talking to another pro guy, and he's like, hey, have you seen that chart, that Jimmy Johnson chart? I said, yeah, I got it. He says, would you share it with me? And I'm like, yeah, I have no problem with that. I actually think it's better if we're all kind of speaking the same lingo. I start sharing the chart with pro guys all over the league. And then I became an agent. And my first year, a media guy says, hey, do you have that chart? Yeah, I have that chart. No problem. So I'm probably the reason that chart went global. But I don't even think anybody uses it anymore. I think they use it.
That's
I think
considered white collar crime at this point, right?
This was a long time ago. So,
Statute of
Dave,
limitations is over. I
don't
think you're
be
good.
mad at me, Dave. I think we traded with you when I was in Philly, and it helped you anyway. So we wouldn't have made the trade without the chart. Having the chart helped us make the trade. It's all good, But I think what's happened is some really intelligent math guys developed, a better chart. And so I think teams have. I've heard there's 3 or 4 different charts out there, and it's more of a guide than anything. It's just to make sure, hey, we're a little short on our points. Can you throw in a 5th? That's kind of how I think it's used today.
I read an article about it recently, in that 3-team swap with Miami, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. Evidently, Miami made out like bandits on the San Francisco part, but the Eagles made out like bandits on the Miami part. So,
yeah, I thought
think
that,
what you wish.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people feel like. Miami did a great job moving down, and Philly did a great job moving down as well.
Yeah, interesting. Well, San Francisco will be happy if they get their guy.
If they get the quarterback that helps them win, who cares, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you got your quarterback, I live in Chicago, and Chicago moved from 3 to 2 to take Mitch Trubisky, and several years ago, and people complained about the extra picks to go from 3 to 2. What they didn't kind of focus on was Cleveland was sitting at 11 back then, and they had called Chicago at 3 and said, what's it going to take to move to 3? So if you're going to make the call to 3, then it stands to reason you're going to make the call to 2 if you're Cleveland at 11. So Chicago knows Cleveland at 11 is trying to get to 3, most likely is going to try and get to 2. The word in the community was they wanted Trubisky as well. And I always contended, if Mitch Trubisky's a player, no one will ever remember what Chicago gave up to go from 3 to 2. That's a big if, because as we know, Mitch didn't turn out to be the player. And because of that, the trade continues to be talked about. Had they picked the right quarterback and he had been successful, no one would have cared. Just like going back to San Fran, who cares what they gave up as long as they get their guy, and he ends up being a great player.
No one talks about the Giants giving up a lot to trade up for Eli Manning, and San Diego trading down with Phillip Rivers. Nobody talks about any of that stuff anymore.
You only talk about it if you pick the wrong player.
Yes. Like, for instance, signing Dante Culpepper instead of Drew Brees. That could be something that you would talk about. Or,
Doctor.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them.
Well, that's a doctor's decision more than anything.
Yeah. So Mike and I have been friends for a really, really long time. And this is not too dissimilar from one of our phone calls. So I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as I have. And Mike, absolutely. Mike is not the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, even though Twitter thinks he is and comes at him on a regular basis, which is one of the funniest bits you'll see on Twitter. But Mike, thank you for your time. Thank you for your friendship. And I want to thank everybody for listening to the Killing Me Smalls podcast. And we'll have to regroup after the draft and see who was right, who was wrong, who was crazy, and what's going to happen from there. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you, man.